Well, how sharp was the learning curve for you in terms of executing those action sequences? I mean, like even if you watch like Batman Begins now,
Yeah.
I mean, as great a director as Christopher Nolan is, there are sequences in that where you kind of really feel like he's figuring out how to shoot
Right.
action, and then he sort of clearly applied that to the next movies.
Right. Well, I don't know. I mean, for me, you learn so much every time you make something.
Mm-hmm.
So I did learn a ton doing this movie. For me, the action in it, it's weird. The fundamentals of shooting action and what I really try and focus on and really get at with shooting action. With that, I feel like there's actually, I can draw a very clear line from what I learned in Brick, shooting the chase scene through the hallway,
Mm-hmm.
with shooting, a big chase scene with guns and Bruce Willis in this movie. Like, I guess you can scale it up. And I would assume, I wouldn't know, but I would assume it'd be the same thing doing a $200 million movie with the Batmobile chasing through the streets. The fundamentals are the same, where you're trying to make it feel exciting and give a sense of exhilaration and a sense of danger, but at the same time keep the audience oriented and have cool shots and not just, shaky cam. So yeah, I guess it's something that I'm sure, you learn a lot every time you go out, but I feel like it's also something that I had in some ways done before. It's just a matter of scaling it up.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, in terms of talking about how much you worked with Joseph, it's obvious that you have like a real collaborative spirit. But when you bring in somebody like Bruce Willis, how much, I guess, flexibility did you have to have? Because it seems now that when stars come into movies, they want to tailor it to their strengths, or they want to tailor it to something that they feel like is, sort of more creatively in their wheelhouse, or however you want to put it. Did you have to make a lot of those changes, and how tough was it to sort of accommodate those and make sure that you still had the core idea and the story?
Yeah, there was none of that with Bruce. There was absolutely 0% of that with Bruce. He came in, especially the stuff that you might look at the script and say, is this something Bruce Willis would do? That's the stuff that he dove into the hardest, and he was just really excited about executing every little thing in it. Any actor who comes in, obviously the part, shifts. That's part of, that's one of the really pleasant parts of the directing process, especially if you wrote the script, is, like I said, at the point you get to production, you've had that script in your head for 2 years, and you've seen that movie. You're looking for people to bring their own thing to it and to surprise you, and that's essential. But and every actor does that, and Bruce did that as well. But it wasn't. It was all just in him bringing himself to the part. None of it was, tailoring it to some specific kind of Bruce Willis image or something. He's a great actor, and he showed up to work not as an icon that we had to wrap this thing around,
Sure.
but as a great actor ready to wrap himself around this part.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, was it difficult to, I guess, sort of acclimate yourself to the process of working with somebody who is, a literal icon? I mean,
Well, the difficult part is when you first cast him and you're looking at his name on the call sheet. You're thinking about, the difficult part is in the shower in the morning before you show up on set for the first day.
Mm-hmm.
You're nervous that you're going to approach. But it really is true that the instant you start working with him, all of that vanishes, and you cast an icon, but you're working with an actor. And the second you start working with Bruce, that it instantly goes to that level, and it feels just like working with Joe, working with Emily. It's really no different. I also just learned so much watching him work. It was such a great experience.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, Emily Blunt gives such a good performance in this movie,
Yeah.
and she's really good at communicating a real sense of strength and vulnerability. And you even have this great sort of love scene, which in another movie would be even maybe more conspicuously sort of shoved into the thing.
Yeah.
I think the way that you handle it actually is interesting. That it's not necessarily like...
It's not a love scene, really. It's interesting.
Sure.
Yeah. It's interesting, yeah.
How did you sort of initially conceive that sequence? Because it is, like the way you execute it is, primarily non-verbally, and it seems totally understandable and in character, and yet I think as with many other aspects of this movie, you look at it and you're like, these are components of what these kinds of movies would have or need to have or something like that.
Right. Well, the typical thing would be... the typical thing in the place that the audience's mind would go to initially would be a love story between the two of them, and that being the thing that drives it. That's not actually where I think the movie is, and that's not what we needed out of that scene. What we needed was two lonely people who suddenly are in this intense situation together, and she makes a very conscious decision to, to connect with him, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's, she's been out on that farm a long time. She hasn't had a real cigarette in a while. So there's that aspect of it. And so it's to me it was more playing to that, which is interesting because it is another one of those things that is a little risky, because if the audience's mind is going in one direction and you're actually playing in the other, it's fun if you're going there and suddenly you weave over. But if you're going there and you feel like, well, I don't know, there's pitfalls to it, but I feel the way that Joe and Emily played it. Yeah, I'm always curious to see the audience's reactions to that scene. And somebody, I was really gratified, someone I talked to, a journalist, she said she and her friends were going to start using Click the Frog as code for booty call text, which would make me really happy if that come up.
Well, having sort of, this being the biggest film that you've sort of done at this point, how do you sort of look at where you want your career to go? I mean, do you This
is gin, by the way. Just straight gin.
Well, at Fantastic Fest, it's actually required.
That's right.
I have an IV going in my arm right now.
That's the way I do it.
But like, how do you sort of think? Can you think strategically about sort of? I'm sure that because of people seeing this, there are probably some opportunities that have already started being availed to you. But what? I guess how are you thinking about making decisions going forward? To be able to pursue things creatively, and then know, if I take something that's bigger, it might give me an opportunity to do 2 more Brothers Bloom down the road, or something like that.
Cashing in, cash that shit in. No, I don't. I mean, I think that I think that having gotten Brick made, having gotten Bloom made, now having gotten Looper made, I feel like I have a team where we can get our own stuff made at this point. And so luckily, I don't have that feeling that I have to make a blah-de-doo movie in order to make my own movies. I know we can make our own, or at least we can for now. Who knows? Down the line, this all may, and at some point will change. But at the moment, we're on a run where we can get our own stories told. And that right now is what's really important to me. It's not to say that. And one of the things that is the same way that, like I described before, you come out of one project, you're looking for kind of the next challenge, from like Bloom to Looper, for example. Coming out of Looper, to me, one of the things that's really, the idea that's really cool is seeing if we can go bigger, seeing if we can go broader, seeing if we can do what's interesting to us and engage on the level we want to engage with an even bigger canvas. So it's not to say I don't want to go more commercial and do more commercial films, but but I'd like to see if I can I still keep telling my stories.
Well, starting on a film that 10 years ago, going through the process of revising it and finally finishing it, do you feel like there's a parallelism between like the process of making it and then in a way what the journey that the character goes on? I mean, there is because I feel like there's something really remarkably cathartic about sort of the journey that Joe goes on.
Well, I guess maybe in that, I don't know, when you start any project, it's got to be coming from the point of seeking a catharsis for yourself. I apologize, this is so pretentious. But I
asked
a
the
pretentious
question. I asked the
so
question, so yeah.
You heard it. You asked the pretentious, so I'm answering. When you start out, it's got to be, you're asking a question that you don't know the answer to, and working through this project and telling the story is going to help you, if not get to the answer, at least redefine the question in a way that's really useful for your life. And so that's for me where this started from, and that maybe you could say is analogous to the journey of the characters in all the movies, I guess. Whether they get to the right place at the end or not, you are hopefully starting with a question and getting to some kind of answer, and that's why, I don't know, for me that's what the process of making these things is all about, I guess. So there's that.
Well, do you find that you really learn, not to continue down this pretentious,
Come on.
I guess, do you feel like you really learn, life lessons, from
God,
either writing, making, or even watching your films?
Oh God! Well, every single every single production, just the 3 that I've done, I mean, they are these weird kind of particle accelerators of life where you step into them, and it may only take 3 years, but you feel like you've lived 10 years during the course of them, and you've met all these people and had these intense experiences and had to use your brain in ways that you never thought you would. They're, yeah, absolutely, man. They're. I mean, that's the other kind of addictive element of making movies is that it just, the experience that you have making them just puts your mind into this hyperdrive place that you just don't have, in day-to-day life. And so yeah, absolutely, I think so.